All right, let's talk about something that sounds kind of dry, but is actually a massive legal superpower for your workplace. We're diving into the Collective Agreement Act, and trust me, you're going to want to know about this.
You know that feeling at work? You're doing a good job, but you just wish there was a way to, I don't know, upgrade things for everybody? Like better pay, clearer rules, a bit more security for the whole team? It usually feels like you're on your own, right? But what if there was a way to hit that upgrade button for everyone at once?
Well, that's exactly what this is all about. So here's our quest map for today. First, we'll figure out what this super contract even is. Then we'll talk about assembling your team, writing the actual rulebook, making it legally powerful, and finally, how long all these protections last. Let's go.
Okay, so first things first. Every good quest starts with understanding your most powerful tool. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's break down the big question. What exactly is a collective agreement?
So here's the deal. A collective agreement is not your personal individual employment contract. It's way bigger. Think of it more like a super contract. It's this formal, written deal that gets hammered out between an employer and a union, and it lays down the rules and working conditions for the entire group of employees.
But why even have this law in the first place? Well, the Act is super clear about its purpose. The whole point is to create harmony, to stabilize the relationship between the company and its workers. It's all about protecting everyone's rights and moving away from a make-it-up-as-we-go situation to a workplace with clear, fair rules.
All right, so now we get what the tool is. So what's next? Well, now it's time to assemble the team and actually start the quest to create the super contract. This is where things get really interesting.
And right off the bat, we hit the number one most important rule of this entire quest. The law makes it crystal clear. Both sides, the employer and the union, have to negotiate in what's called good faith. That means you can't just blow the other side off or refuse to talk without a really good reason. The law basically says you have to take this seriously.
So how does this whole process even kick off? Who gets to demand a negotiation? Well, the law sets a very specific bar. A union has to represent more than half, that's over 50% of the employees in a specific group. Once they hit that magic number, boom, they legally have the power to go to the employer and say, hey, it's time to sit down and talk.
Okay, so who are the actual people sitting at the negotiating table? The law is pretty straightforward here. Each side gets to pick their own team based on their own rules. Usually, these negotiators have to be members of the union or the employer's group. But you can bring in an outsider, say a lawyer or some other expert. But there's a catch. The other side has to agree to it in writing. And now we get to the really fun part. Your team is assembled, you're sitting at the table, so what's on the agenda? What do you actually talk about? Well, this is where you get to decide which power-ups you want to write into the rulebook for your workplace.
And let me tell you, the list of what you can negotiate is huge. We're talking about all the big stuff, right? Wages, hours, bonuses. But it goes way deeper. You can negotiate rules for promotions, training, and workplace safety. You can even set up official procedures for handling disagreements. I mean, it covers so much. Pretty much anything related to working conditions is on the table.
Now, while there's a ton of freedom, the law does have some interesting boundaries and special powers. For instance, here's a restriction. You can't make a rule in the agreement that stops the company from bringing in new machines or technology. But on the flip side, there's this really special power. If both sides agree, you can set up what's called a union shop. This means the employer agrees to only hire union members. It's a powerful option, but it requires everyone to be on board.
Okay, let's say you've done it. You've negotiated all the terms and you've written the new rulebook. But right now, it's just a piece of paper. So how do you cast that binding spell to make it a real, legally powerful contract for everyone?
It's actually a pretty clear three-step process. Step 1, internal approval. The union members have to vote on it, and a majority has to say yes. Step 2, sign on the dotted line. Both the employer and the union officially sign the agreement. And finally, Step 3, make it official. You send a copy to the local labor authority, so it's on the government's record. That's it.
Okay, and this is where the real magic kicks in. This is probably the most powerful part of the whole act. Once that collective agreement is signed and official, its terms automatically become part of your individual contract. And get this, if your old contract had anything in it that was worse than the new agreement, the new, better terms automatically win. It's a guaranteed upgrade, no questions asked.
So who exactly is bound by this new super contract? The law spells it out perfectly. It legally applies to the employer, the union itself, and every single employee who is a member of that union. It's a shared rule book that everyone in that group has to follow.
All right, so the agreement is signed, sealed, and delivered. The quest is a success. But is that it? Is it happily ever after? Well, let's talk about how long this agreement actually lasts and what kind of protections it offers for the long haul.
So, how long does this thing last? You've got a couple of options. You can set a fixed term, but it can't be for more than 3 years. Or you can have an indefinite agreement, which can be ended by either side as long as they give 3 months' notice, but only after the first year. Now, here's a really important safety net the law builds in. Even after an agreement officially expires, all the main working conditions stay in place until a new deal is signed, so you don't just fall off a cliff.
The law also hands you a kind of super shield with some major legal protections. For one, you cannot be fired just for using the rights you've won in the agreement. That's a huge one. Also, you can't legally be forced to give up those rights while you're employed. And finally, both sides have to work to keep the peace. They're legally required to prevent things like strikes or lockouts that would break the terms of the deal.
So you might be wondering, what happens if someone just doesn't play by the rules? What if an employer refuses to negotiate in good faith? Well, this law has some serious teeth. There's a hefty penalty, anywhere from 100,000 up to $500,000 new Taiwan dollars. That shows you just how serious the government is about making sure both sides come to the table.
And just so you know, everything we've talked about today comes straight from the source, the official Collective Agreement Act. You can look it up yourself in the Laws and Regulations database of the Republic of China, Taiwan. It's all there.
So there you have it, the Collective Agreement Act. It's not just some boring legal document, is it? It's really more like a map for unlocking real, powerful upgrades for your entire workplace. It gives you the tools, the rules, and the protections to level up together. So the map is in your hands. The only question left is, are you ready for the quest?